This video is about the reproductive system, some of its structures and how it works. We'll start with the male reproductive system. The main organs of both reproductive systems is the gonad. For the males, the gonads are the testes. The main job of the testes, to produce sperm. But the testes also produce a hormone, testosterone. So you can see how it got its name, testes, testosterone. The primary job of the male reproductive system is to create and deliver sperm to the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system also makes eggs, but then nourishes and protects the baby from conception to birth. You'll notice some of the major parts of the male reproductive system. The sperm are being produced in the testes by spermatogenesis. They mature in the epididymis. They're going to travel down these tubes called the vas deferens. Those tubes then will enter the prostate gland. The prostate gland, there's going to be some fluid added to the sperm cells to make it semen. Also in the prostate gland, the seminal vesicle is going to add some fluids to the sperm cells. The sperm leave the area surrounded by the prostate gland, but they're traveling through the urethra and then exit from the penis into the vagina. The penis has some spongy tissue that fills with blood. So there's no bones in the penis. It just fills with blood, and that's called an erection. The testes can help regulate the temperature of the sperm cells so that tight genes, let's say, will prevent those testes from regulating the temperature to cooling off or warming up. In the case of skinny genes, cooling off. And that produces dysfunctional sperm cells, which might lead to some infertility. So the scrotum does help to regulate the temperature, and that helps produce those sperm cells correctly. Semen is sperm cells plus fluid. So in the fluid of semen, there's very little volume is sperm cells, but there's millions of the sperm cells in that ejaculate. The seminal vesicles are going to add a fluid that has a fructose in it, a sugar, and that sugar provides energy for those sperm cells and helps them to swim. The bulbourethral gland secretes a lubricant just prior to ejaculation. And a vasectomy is a procedure in which the vas deferens is actually severed, it's cut in half, and then each end is burned so that there's no way that the testes can release sperm into the semen. So a person with a vasectomy will still ejaculate, just there won't be sperm cells, but there'll be fluid. Some of the major hormones of the male reproductive system include luteinizing hormone, testosterone, and follicle-stimulating hormone. If you kind of follow the graph, the luteinizing hormone will help stimulate testosterone production. The follicle-stimulating hormone will help produce or stimulate sperm production. So these two things are targeting the testes, and the testes in response are making testosterone and sperm. Then it's a negative feedback mechanism. As the sperm count rises, as the testosterone level rises, then it's going to signal the anterior pituitary gland to shut down the production of luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone. If a man is taking testosterone supplements, so steroids basically, then that's going to keep the testosterone levels high, which will shut down the production of follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Without being stimulated, the testes no longer produce their own testosterone or their own semen. So that's why one of the downsides of steroid use is that the testes no longer produce testosterone, and also infertility with the low sperm counts. Switching over to the female reproductive system, the gonads here are the ovaries. The ovaries produce eggs. Eggs are ovulated once a month. The primary hormone here instead of testosterone is estrogen. The egg travels from the ovary down the uterine tubes. Now, sometimes the uterine tubes are called oviducts, sometimes they're called fallopian tubes, but the egg is going to travel down those uterine tubes to the uterus. The uterus is muscular, it's involuntary muscle, and it's got a thick muscular lining to it because it will stretch. But then as the labor begins, it's going to contract kind of violently to push the baby out of the birth canal. The door of the uterus is the cervix, and often women will get checked for cervical cancer, whereas men will get checked for prostate cancer. The cervix is unique to women, the prostate is unique to men. After the cervix is the vagina. If you look carefully at the diagram, you'll notice that the ovary is sitting right on top of the urinary bladder, which again is why, as a woman is pregnant and the baby's growing and just resting on that urinary bladder, a woman has to go to the bathroom often. You also notice the order of the openings, that there's a urethra, and then there's the vagina, and then there's the anus. So keeping those areas clean is important to preventing urinary tract infections. Sometimes the breasts are included in the reproductive system because of breastfeeding. After the baby's born, it's a great supply of nutrition for the baby. The mother's milk is high in calorie and fat content, which is just what the baby needs for brain development. By breastfeeding, the mother can also give the baby some passive immunity. And some mothers suggest that it supplies a connection between them and their newborn, a psychological connection. Here's some of the hormone cycles for the female. Notice the beginning of the month starts with a spike of follicle-stimulating hormone. Notice how day one in the monthly cycle is started by a spike in follicle-stimulating hormone. For every woman, the day one is going to be different. It might be beginning of the month, middle of the month, end of the month, but for her, it's the first start of this 28-day cycle. That spike in follicle-stimulating hormone corresponds to the selection of an egg that will begin to develop. That egg will continue to develop for 2 weeks. On day 14, there's a spike in luteinizing hormone, which causes the egg to be ovulated. From day 14 to day 28, that egg is traveling. It's traveling down the uterine tubes toward the uterus, and then if it's unfertilized, it will leave the vagina by the menstruation. That usually happens around day 28. But notice that it's just after that menstruation or menstrual flow is finished that the next egg is being selected. In 14 days it'll be ovulated and the cycle continues. Notice on day 14 there's a spike in estrogen. That estrogen is released during ovulation. The follicle stores that estrogen hormone. When the egg is ovulated, that estrogen's released. Estrogen stimulates secondary sex traits and bone remodeling in women. There's another hormone, progesterone, that's being secreted by the corpus luteum. So the corpus luteum is what's left of the follicle without the egg. So the corpus luteum is secreting progesterone. Progesterone maintains the uterine lining. It keeps it thick. So as the progesterone levels are going up, the uterus lining is getting thicker. If the egg is not fertilized, then the corpus luteum begins to shrivel up, and with it, the amount of progesterone begins to go down, so does the uterine lining. And that decrease in progesterone is why the menstrual flow begins. So the ovaries produce eggs. And if that egg is fertilized, it's normally fertilized in the uterine tubes. Makes its way down to the endometrium, that inside lining of the uterus, where it will embed into that lining. That's where the umbilical cord is going to form. And that new baby is going to produce a hormone, human chorionic gonadotropin. That hormone helps maintain the corpus luteum. The maintaining of the corpus luteum maintains that endometrial lining, and that baby then can be nourished until birth. This process continues from the time a female reaches puberty, when she begins ovulating and menstruating, until around 50 to 55, when she no longer has any eggs. So a woman is born with all the eggs she's going to have. That's why sometimes people refer to it as a biological clock. There's only so many eggs that she's going to ovulate in her lifetime. And there's only a narrow window where those eggs will have the best chance without any genetic disorders. So a lot of times women after 40 don't want to give birth because of the chances of disorders go way up. But that window is going to stop. At some point they run out of eggs and there's no more chance for them to give birth. Males, from the time they reach puberty, will start making sperm, and they'll make that sperm till the day they die. I hope that helps you understand a little bit more about the reproductive system, the differences between males and females, and how that system functions.